Hello everybody, it's Mike Levin on Friday, August 5th, 2016 at around 8 a.m. Just heading out for work, and I think that probably one of my most valuable topics I can contribute to the YouTubes and the internets is a little talk about selection of programming languages. There is nothing more important than your choice of tools that you use through your life, and as I've pointed out in prior videos, that choice does make a difference. Although, as any know-it-all you talk to about this will point out, that any Turing Complete language can do all the things that any other Turing Complete language can do. So anything you can do in JavaScript, you can do in Python. Anything in Python, you can do in Lisp. Anything you can do in Lisp, you can do in VBScript or whatever. As long as it has the, the set of functions that define Turing Complete, any set of work can be carried out in any language. And while this is true, it's about the same as saying any idea you want to express, you can express in any other spoken language. And whereas in one language, it might be 2 or 3 words that express a rich, complex idea and express it very well, whereas in another spoken language, it would take you 3 or 4 paragraphs to recreate that same concept in someone's mind. And there's all sorts of reasons for this: cultural context, the many words for snow that Eskimos have is an often cited example. But then so is like the beauty and elegance of different languages when used in poetry. German is very long, harsh, up and down sounding syllable words, whereas French is a lot more curly and flowing, and those are just the romantic languages. And of course, the real presumptions about a language change when you go to stuff that has entirely different bases, like hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs, or Chinese. And even they have such issues with their older character-based symbols that they've adopted a system called kanji to make things more phonetic. And so these same issues exist in machine languages, the languages you use to talk to machines, which, sometimes when you say machine language, it's talking about a particular style of programming. What things get compiled into, the executables that you pop into a location in memory, and the program just starts executing because that file contains the machine level byte instructions, things that align to features that are built into the particular hardware and chips you're using. And when I say a machine language, I'm just talking about any language that's intended to help you communicate your intent and your instructions to machines, rather than spoken or written languages designed to communicate it to other humans. But the idea is basically the same. You're drawing a picture and you're recreating that picture, that scenario, that set of conditions inside the head of a person, in the case of a spoken language, or inside a machine, in the case of a machine language. Languages are languages. And there's many things out there written on this topic. How they do vary. Spoken languages oftentimes have a lot of redundancy. You say the same things over and over. You repeat yourself. You do it more than once. And that is less the case in machine languages, unless of course it's Perl, in which case there's 10 ways to say the same thing, and you can use all different techniques and compare them to each other to make sure you get the same result. Probably very good for testing mutations. But for the most part, languages strive to have a proper way to do things and reduce the reuse of code. Certain entire languages are based around the principle of don't repeat yourself. And whereas a lot of CompSci people think that this is the one true mantra of CompSci, the truth is that there is some room for redundancy, or else you would only ever type each word in the language once in your program. And every other reference to that word would just point back to the original reference, and you'd have a series of words in some sort of block construct hierarchy, and then just a bunch of pointers to where those words occurred for the first time. So it's ridiculous to carry it to the extreme, and the whole point is how granular or chunky the components of the language are, because sometimes it's just at the right level of chunkiness that repeating yourself is the right thing. I find Python to be that way. It took me a long time to get to this point, but I am there after probably 20 plus years of programming different languages, starting as far back as BASIC on the TRS-80, a Radio Shack computer, nicknamed the Trash 80, from the 80s, and all the way to today, where I'm on Python 3.5 under Jupyter Notebook, and think I found the very best environment in which to learn and develop and practice and integrate into my day-to-day work programming, as if I were using a spoken language, not a machine language. Many of the overhead parts of the process of having to speak to machines are magically alleviated, especially the need to use some sort of IDE or text editor, of which I've actually fallen in love with Vim, and have taken this very muscle memory, geeky, elite approach to text editing, and that's part of what's driving the popularity of my videos. But recently I have come to appreciate the power of being able to package up your easy to pick apart, easy to understand one-off projects. Very different than the large-scale enterprisey type stuff that you read about in the design patterns books, and more like I don't know, a bag of tricks, a Swiss Army knife, toolbox that you carry around with you and just use when you need them for the tasks at hand. And that's the kind of programming I do, and that's the kind of introduction to programming I'll be providing. And I will certainly be rubbing a few folks out there the wrong way, because they think the world does begin and end at the formal CompSci truisms for the design patterns. And that's one way of looking at the world, and I completely acknowledge the wisdom of that way of looking at the world when you're working on a certain class of applications, of which not all work, especially these days, belongs to. And I think the way I teach it is a much more gentle, useful, kid-friendly introduction. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Anyway, time to hop on the train. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.